A deal on Dickens, who could resist? A stack of Austen, warmly kissed. Golden Age crime tales twist and turn, every page a treasure to learn. Books keep coming home with me, piles so tall they're all I see. Turn a page and sail the sea, reading always feels so free.
Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. I actually have 3 more books to review of that big box of books I had to review, but I'm getting a little more tired, so I'm going to save the 2 mysteries for next time I sit down and have book review time. But I do want to talk about A Magician Among the Spirits. This is a Harry Houdini book. Did I introduce myself? I don't think I did. Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. If I did not introduce myself, now I have. I started this book, I want to say like the last day of February, or pretty close to. I tore through this. Oh my gosh, I didn't intend to read this so soon. I just wanted to flip through it, and then I went from flipping through it till I was actually reading it. Like, his style is very readable. So, Harry Houdini, if you are not aware, after his mother died, he went on a crusade against spiritualism. And then actually on this cover is a picture of him and Arthur Conan Doyle. Arthur Conan Doyle was a famous crusader for spiritualism. Shockingly, the 2 men were friends. And actually his relationship with Arthur Conan Doyle is just sort of, it's throughout this book. You can't help but stumble over it constantly. It's in the footnotes. It's in references he makes throughout the book. So Houdini, he used to not only go about exposing spiritualists himself, but he was constantly looking at research for something like this book, so that way he could further expose spiritualists that other people who were exposing spiritualists had already done, because he wanted the information to get out there. There's so many times in this book where you can see that he is truly angered by the charlatans who would make themselves rich upon the grief of others, or the need for others to reach out to loved ones that had passed, off of the either naivete or gullibility of others. There's a quote in here by him. Okay, so on page 190, he calls spiritualism a cult. Then later on, he refers to them as human vultures. And he says that he thinks that this is an insult to the scavengers to compare such human beings to him. But there is, to my mind, no other fit comparison. So he really was disgusted by them. He was someone who now he says that he tried to be as open-minded as possible and like really, really try to have an open mind when he would actually go into these seances. After so many times of exposing fakes, I wonder how open his mind was able to be. With, good reason. He had exposed a ton of people. But it's hard to be truly open-minded at that point, I would imagine. Especially since he has such an extreme disgust for, and again, rightfully, for people who would take advantage of people's grief. And of people who just really wanted to believe. And you could argue, well, that was their choice. But there just is something disgusting about playing off of someone's weakest time or their most real emotional need and knowingly messing with them. And He says here, let's see. Actually, I'm not going to necessarily say that one there because I don't want to give away his ending there. The way although it is throughout this book where he talks about how a lot of times it's about illusion, and actually it is illusion, fooling people's senses, making them think they're seeing something that they are not. And as someone who was an illusionist, who was a magician, insofar as like when you're talking about the entertainment form of magic, he knew how these tricks worked. Like, he had done a so-called second sight act. That's apparently how he met his wife. They had, or at least they did a second sight act together where it might look like they were doing telepathy, but they weren't. They would be doing signals back and forth. And he said before he realized how wrong it was, he had at one point in his career done a level of not truly calling himself a medium, but where he would be doing something similar. And once he had lost his mother, he came to realize, it dawned on him that it was really an awful thing to do. And like I said, he spent decades fighting this. He talks about people who would have spirits tell people, oh, you need to leave a part of your money to the medium. And you'd think that would be a clue. But no, like, people who bought all into the spiritualism were like, okay, well, the spirits say so. And so they would leave their money. Or you'd have the spiritualists who would steal jewels in the dark. But still have people like Arthur Conan Doyle being like, touting them, either like excusing away their crimes or saying things like when they be caught doing illusionist tricks, being like, well, it was like sometimes the strain gets so much of reaching out to spirits. Like, that's why they just resorted to tricks this time. It's like, and you're going to believe when they got caught doing tricks and telling you as a spirit once that they weren't always doing tricks. It's like Conan Doyle, I found him so confusing and frustrating in this book. He wouldn't listen. He would tout his own observational skills, but he admits that he just chose to believe it one day. And nothing was going to change his mind. Nothing. Didn't matter what Houdini told him. Didn't matter. He was convinced Houdini had like spiritualist abilities, even though Houdini was like, no, man, these are tricks. I'm not going to tell you how I do my tricks because that's part of my act. And that would lose the illusion if everyone knew how to do what I was doing. But these are tricks. Like, I trained myself to be able to do these things. No magic, normal human ability here. But there were like there were publications who would try to claim that Houdini had spirits working with him and he was dematerializing and materializing. And Houdini was like, that's not what's happening. Stop it. But he talks about how a lot of these tricks are done. He names names, says, hey, this person is a fake. We expose them this way. This person is an absolute horrible criminal. He talks about how they would gather their information. There's so seemingly omnipotent information that could have only come from the spirits, but was coming from things like stealing people's letters, listening to gossip, that kind of thing. And then sometimes where some of the things being told wouldn't necessarily be anything that convincing, but because the stubborn adherents like Conan Doyle, who would only see or hear what they wanted to see or hear, they would be utterly convinced by the most mundane, obvious trickery. But they would claim that, somehow you weren't being open enough if you didn't just believe what you were being told by all the spiritualists. Even though, again, time and time and time again, people that Conan Doyle would say were, legit were not. One thing that bothered me besides the fact the whole Conan Doyle, like, he used his influence to try to spread this, even though I wonder how much he was really... Here's why I wonder how much he actually was fooled. If a part of him registered it wasn't real. His wife was a spirit, was a medium. Actually, Houdini tells a story about how she gathers information to tell him stuff about his mother during a seance. And, you know, how he knew that it was fake. Like, he could tell what she was doing. But it bothers me that if Conan Doyle's wife was a medium, either he had to know she was doing tricks constantly, or the woman was lying to him throughout their marriage. It has to be one of the two things. Like, either he knows that she has no spiritual gifts, or she's lying to him because she was using tricks and illusion. Like, Houdini was able to prove it. And so that bothered me. It's just, I have very mixed feelings about Conan Doyle because of this. It doesn't change my feelings about his writing, but it does affect my opinion of the man. I always knew that he was really deep into spiritualism. I hadn't known about him being married to a medium. Now, like, a lot of the adherents that Conan Doyle mentioned who were higher level ones, it would happen after a loss that they would, like, finally make up their mind. But Conan Doyle made such a point of proudly mentioning how much of a cool observer he was. Not nearly as cool an observer as he thought he was. I thought it was interesting Houdini mentioned how scientists would get fooled because they didn't know what they were looking for, and they would let the illusionist, the medium, set the parameters, like, dictate. So of course the mediums were able to fool the scientists because it wasn't a true experiment. The medium got to set everything, like the environment, who sat where, the lighting, everything. So, of course, they were going to get the results that they wanted. Versus whenever the person testing the medium was the one who was setting the parameters, the medium would get caught. 100% of the time. So, I thought that was, something that was interesting that he mentioned how often scientists would let themselves be led around by the mediums and just be like, okay, well, that's what you need to be set up. No, you don't let the person you're testing decide the parameters. How does that even make sense? But the other thing Houdini mentioned is that a lot of times it would also take getting a magician involved, where scientists would say, like, I know they're doing the trick. I don't know how they're doing it. I can't figure it out. And they would go and pull in an illusionist / magician person. And then they would sit down and say, this is how they did it, and I can replicate it and show you how that's done. And there were quite a few mediums that were exposed that way by, a lot of them wouldn't let magicians come to their seances because they knew that they would get exposed. If Houdini's name was on there, oh, heck no, they're not going to let Houdini into a seance. After a while, it would get hard. Like, he did have people, it doesn't come up in this book, but I did read elsewhere that he would have his detectives, for lack of a better term, his scouts, go ahead of him to figure out which seances he could go to. Because if he went ahead, the medium would clear out or suddenly be busy or sick or something. Now, you would get the ones who would shockingly let him come in, and he would be able to tell what they were doing. So, yeah, I thought that this was interesting. I thought it was very well written. I did enjoy it. And I don't mean well written as in, like, when you look at To Kill a Mockingbird, where the style is just beautiful writing. It's just, well written that way. No, this Houdini's, it's a very readable style. he repeats himself at times because you could tell how frustrated he is with this. He so many times says how cruel and how horrible it is for people to take advantage. And that those are the true victims of the mediums, that's who actually suffers. And he also, one of the other themes that he comes across, let's see, I'm trying to find, I thought there was something else I wanted to talk about here. Oh yeah, this is the quote I think I was trying to find. Sir Arthur has told me time and time again that his whole life is based on the subject of spiritualism, and that he has sacrificed some of the best years of his life to the betterment and spread of the cause, which, due to sincerity, is a beautiful faith. Once again, I'm question how sincere Conan Doyle was, or I don't know. I'm conflicted on that. But in my opinion, it is no sacrifice to convince people who have recently suffered a bereavement of the possibility and reality of communicating with their dear ones. To me, the poor suffering followers, eagerly searching for relief from their heart pain that follows the passing on of a dear one, are the sacrifice. And he expresses that several different ways at several different points. But it's a very, I find it to be just a very readable style, because it feels like you're reaching through the years to Houdini, who was just an amazing, interesting person anyway. So skilled, and he seems to have been a very passionate person. And that comes through in this. And I've just started reading his biography, which is so far very interesting as well. Would I recommend this? Absolutely. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I read through it so quickly. I was writing notes throughout. Sticky notes. I have little bunny sticky notes. If I want to, I can stick them in a journal. But bunny, because of magician. Yeah, it worked in my head. But yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I would absolutely recommend this. And he isn't a man who doesn't believe in the afterlife, Houdini. He does believe in the afterlife. He does believe in God. That's part of what makes him so angry, to be quite honest with you as well, is he sees this, like when they have points where there are some mediums who would pray or read Bible verses. I think this was usually for the spirit photography. He found it almost as, I don't know if he used the word sacrilege, but something similar in feel, where he was just like, it seems like this is, I think he might have used the word sacrilege or heretical or something like that, where he's just like, this is wrong. This is just awful to use prayer to then disguise the fact that you are lying to people, purposely lying to people, and using illusion and trickery to convince them of lies about the spiritual life. He was horrified at that. So he definitely believes in there being God, afterlife, everything like that. It's just, like I said, that's part of what drove him as well. So, yes. I think I've said enough about this. I probably could go on and probably would keep repeating myself. Houdini, A Magician Among the Spirits. I've also picked up his other book that he wrote about the man that because Harry Houdini's not actually his name. Actually, he was born in Germany, I think it was. His name was Eric Weiss. Although that Weiss is actually the Americanization of his last name. And then when he took a stage name, he became Harry Houdini because what had gotten him really wanting to go into stage magic was several books written by a French magician, stage performer named Robert Houdin. Houdin? I'm sure that's how it's pronounced. And I guess later on he found out that some of the things that Houdin credited himself with creating, he did not actually create. He took credit for other people's work, which horrified Houdini, so he did an expose. That was his first book, was it was something, either the exposure of Robert Houdin or something like that. But he had taken on the name Houdini because someone had told him if you put an I at the end of the name, it's like so-and-so. And he really wanted to be like Robert Houdin. So he's like, well, I'll become Harry Houdini, like Houdin. And he was horrified when he found out that the man actually claimed others' ideas as his own and was not nearly as great as Houdini thought he was. And so he wrote that expose, which is his first book. So I have now his first book as well. I'm not sure when I'll read it, but I really enjoyed his style for this book. And it's another expose type of book. He gets himself really fired up when he wrote this expose. So I'm assuming that kind of energy is going to go into the other expose, although maybe not to the extent of this one, which also had the spiritual aspect and he had the anger involved with this that I can't imagine would quite be matched in the other book for that topic. But yeah, I've probably worked this book over way too much for anyone's interest but my own. Thank you very much for joining me. I do recommend reading this, if only to hear, in quotes, Houdini's own voice, because he does have a definite personality that comes off of the page, I feel. And it's also to experience through this writing, kind of get a taste of his very interesting and kind of challenging, I would imagine, friendship with Arthur Conan Doyle. Frustrating also, I would imagine. So, because it is always frustrating when you are talking to someone and they aren't really listening to you, even if you don't have to agree. When that person, you tell them, no, I'm doing things this way, and they're like, no, you aren't, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're actually, you're actually channeling the spirits, and that's how you're able to do what you do. No, these are tricks that I learned how to do and train my body to do. No, man, you're channeling the spirits. Ah! That would be so frustrating. So, or to be able to go no, I've proven this guy's a trickster. No, you're wrong. But I've proven it. Yeah, you're wrong. So that would be so frustrating. But yeah, that aspect was interesting. I just enjoyed this. I'm going to stop now before I just keep repeating myself. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope that you have a very wonderful day, and I will see you for the next video. God bless.
Books keep coming home with me, piles so tall they're all I see. Turn a page and sail the sea. Reading always feels so free.